The glass cracked with a sound so soft it could have been a sigh. Dust lifted from the wooden frame as I pried open its back, the air thick with the scent of old varnish and something faintly sweet, like dried roses long pressed between the pages of a forgotten book. The photograph inside was of a wedding in 1939, a young man in uniform, a woman in lace smiling bravely into the lens, and behind them, the shadow of a mother trying not to cry. I'm the caretaker of letters that never found their way home. War letters hidden in attics, sealed in trunks, buried beneath silence. This is Mother's lost war letters, where we uncover the words they never got to hear in time. Tonight I'm holding a letter folded behind this photograph, tucked there with such care that the frame itself became its coffin. The handwriting trembles across the paper, as if even the ink knew the world was about to break. The year was 1939. Europe was a breath away from burning. A mother wrote to her only son on the morning of his rushed wedding, blessing him and hiding within her blessings a truth she could never speak aloud. For decades, the family smiled at this photograph, never realizing what was trapped behind it. Generations grew, loved and died without knowing the secret sealed between glass and paper. A secret that changes everything they thought they knew about who they were. Someone lived an entire life under a name that wasn't truly theirs. The light from the window strikes the table now, thin as winter milk. I can hear the slow tick of a wall clock, marking each second between ignorance and revelation. The paper beneath my fingers is brittle, its edges browned like the crust of old bread. Somewhere beneath the surface of its words, a woman is still whispering to her son, words that waited 80 years for someone to finally listen. If stories like this stay with you long after they end, please like this video and subscribe to Mother's Lost War Letters so these voices are never forgotten again. The letter rests on the table before me, a faint crease down its center, the ink still clinging to the fibers as if refusing to let go. The house is silent except for the clock and the wind outside, brushing against the window like a memory. I smooth the paper open, take a slow breath, and prepare to read what she never got to say in time. The letter trembles slightly in my hands as I begin to read, the faint scent of candle smoke rising from its folds. The handwriting curls like a voice trying to remain steady. My dearest Henry, I write this before the bells ring for your wedding, before the photographer arrives, and before I must pretend my heart isn't breaking. The church windows are fogged from the rain, and I've been standing by the stove all morning trying to dry your collar one last time. You were always careless with your uniforms, always running late, always smiling as if the world would wait for you. I can hear your fiancée in the next room, Eleanor, laughing with the seamstress. She has the kind of laugh that makes a room forget the war for a moment. I pray she'll keep that light when the trains begin to leave again. They say the regiments will be called within days. I tell myself you'll be stationed somewhere quiet, far from the front, though I know such places hardly exist anymore. Your father's photograph still hangs above the mantel, the one taken before he marched away in 1918. You were only 2, clutching his cap like a toy. When I dust that frame, I always imagine he's been watching us grow smaller, watching me turn gray, waiting for the sound of boots that never came home. There's something I need to write before it's too late, before the vows and the cheers and the war swallow all our small truths. But I find myself hesitating, afraid the ink will betray me faster than my own mouth. I've placed a ribbon around this letter, the blue one from your christening gown. Do you remember that little box I kept above the pantry, where I stored your first lock of hair? The ribbon was tied around it. Keep it, please. It once held the scent of lavender from the linens we dried in the summer of 1924, when we thought peace was something permanent. The kettle on the stove whistles softly now. It sounds like the sirens that sometimes cry from the harbor when ships come in at night. I remember that same sound the night your father's letter arrived, the one with the government seal, the one I never showed you. You were too small to understand what missing meant. You only asked why I kept his boots by the door for so long. You're leaving soon, Henry. They say it's honorable, this calling of men to defend what's left of Europe. But I look at your hands and I see only the boy who once fed crumbs to sparrows outside our window. How could those hands hold a gun? Eleanor doesn't know how frightened I am. She told me last night she wants to name your first child after me if it's a girl. I smiled, though my chest ached so sharply I had to turn away. I think she believes strength means silence. Maybe she's right. Maybe silence is all mothers are allowed in times like these. Outside, the rain has turned to snow. The garden looks ghostly, the rose bushes bowed under white. Your father planted those roses the spring before he left. Every year they bloom, no matter how harsh the winter was, as if he found a way to come back through them. I folded your father's old pocket watch into the handkerchief in your drawer. It doesn't run anymore, but maybe you can fix it. Or maybe it will remind you that even when time breaks, love doesn't. Henry, before you take your vows today, there's something I should tell you. I should have told you long ago, but the truth was too heavy when you were young, and later, too dangerous when tongues could ruin a life. You were born under a different name. The papers were changed when you were barely a month old. You were never meant to bear your father's surname, but I can't. The ink trails off. The rest of the line fades, the words lost in a streak of ink, as if her pen had faltered under the weight of what she was about to confess. The page trembles in my hands. A corner of the letter bears a faint ring. Tea, perhaps, or tears that dried decades ago. I can almost see her sitting at that kitchen table, the window fogged from steam, her fingers ink-stained, the clock ticking beside her. She might have heard the church bells through the open door, the sound calling her son away before she could finish. Back to the letter. I will keep this letter near me until I find the courage to give it to you. If I cannot, then perhaps one day it will find its way to you when I no longer can explain myself. You were loved into this world, Henry, even if the story of your birth was woven from fear. Whatever you hear after I am gone, remember this: nothing that came before you was your fault. I can hear the door opening in the letter's silence, the shuffle of boots, voices calling, laughter echoing from the hall. She must have folded it quickly, slipped it behind the photograph that same morning, before the vows, before the photographer snapped the image of them smiling, as if the world were intact. Her signature rests small and slanted at the bottom. Mother. No first name, no address, just that single word, like a prayer unfinished. I set the letter down gently, its edges fragile as breath. The snow outside my own window drifts sideways, just as it must have that day in 1939. Somewhere below the ticking of the clock, I can hear the faintest echo of a bell. Church or memory, I can't tell. I look again at the photograph. The mother's eyes, caught behind the smiling couple, seem to know the secret sealed in the frame, a secret she buried beneath the one thing she knew would never be thrown away, a picture of happiness. And now, 8 decades later, her words are finally breathing again. The letter continues, its ink shifting from deep black to soft brown, as though the years themselves had breathed across the paper. The handwriting steadies, as if the mother had taken another sheet and resumed her confession once the church bells had faded. My dear boy, if I could stop time, I would keep you in this kitchen, standing by the window with your sleeves rolled, waiting for your boots to dry by the fire. I would keep the smell of bread rising and the hum of the wireless tuned low, whispering songs that made you laugh when you were small. But time doesn't ask, it just goes. And we are left running behind it, holding pieces of what we love, hoping not to lose them in the dark. Today should be a beginning, not an ending. I've set the table for tea after the ceremony. Your favorite apple cake, the one I made for your 10th birthday when you wished for your father to walk through the door. You won't remember, but I do. You blew out the candle and turned to me, certain the door would open. When it didn't, you only nodded, quiet and brave, as if you'd already learned that wishes were a luxury. I wanted to write you the small things, the recipe for that cake, the way to keep the crust from burning, how to lace your boots so they don't rub when you march. I wanted to tell you that when you can't sleep, you should breathe in slow and think of the smell of soap drying on the line in summer. These are the things that keep a person alive when the world decides it won't. But I know you will want more than comfort. You will want truth, and I have owed you that for 20 years. The winter you were born, the war had just ended, though no one in this house felt peace. Your father had come home with a limp and a silence I could not cross. He loved you fiercely, but feared he would pass his nightmares to you. And then, one night in January, he didn't come home. They found his coat by the river. I never asked what happened. I told people it was an accident. The priest nodded. Everyone nodded. That's what people did when they pitied a widow. Months later, when the world was still gray and rationed, I found out I was with child again. I was ashamed, Henry, not of you, but of the world that would never forgive a woman for needing warmth. The man I had turned to for comfort was kind, quiet, a mechanic who fixed radios. He was already promised to someone else. When I told him, he left without a word. You were born in silence, in a small hospital near the coast, and I was given a choice I did not know how to make. I signed your father's name on the birth record. It was the only way you would be safe. Safe from gossip, safe from shame, safe from a world that punishes women more for their survival than for their sins. So yes, your name, your very name, is a mercy and a lie. But every lie I told was to protect you. I remember the day you asked me, why do I look nothing like the picture of father? You were 11. I said you had my eyes. That part was true. Everything else was silence. I had planned to tell you before your wedding, before you began a new family built on a foundation I knew would one day crack. But when you brought Eleanor to tea that first Sunday, her joy filled every corner of the room. I saw in her the life you deserved, the life I nearly destroyed with one desperate decision. I couldn't bring myself to break it, so I hid the letter, believing that some truths can sleep safely if love keeps them warm. The pen stroke falters, and I can almost hear her sigh through the paper. The next paragraph is gentler, as if she needed to rest before continuing. Promise me one thing, Henry, that you will never judge a mother by the stories told about her, only by the ones she couldn't bear to tell. Every silence has its reason. Every secret has a cost. I paid mine the day I changed your name. She writes about the small plans she made for his future, the ones that now feel painfully ordinary. When the war is over, come back to this house. The roof still leaks near the chimney, but I will mend it. The roses will bloom again by spring, and I will hang new curtains, blue like the ribbon you wore on your christening day. I'll bake the cake you love, and we'll sit in the garden pretending time hasn't stolen so much from us. Maybe Eleanor will bring the baby. Maybe I'll hold her once before the world turns again. The clock ticks in her words. Each sentence feels like a prayer disguised as a plan. She names things she hopes to buy: a new pot, a radio with clear sound, a better coat for him when he returns. She imagines him walking through the door with the smell of coal dust and rain, saying, "I'm home, Mother." Then the handwriting changes slightly again, thinner now, like the ink running low or her hand trembling. If this letter ever reaches you, it will mean I couldn't speak when I should have. It will mean I left this truth inside a photograph, hoping one day someone would find it. Maybe not you, maybe your child, or someone who will understand better than I do what it means to forgive the dead. I pause reading, the silence of the house wrapping around me. The photograph still rests beside the letter, the image of joy trapped just before war began. The groom, Henry, is grinning wide, unaware that his whole identity has been built upon his mother's quiet lie. The bride, Eleanor, holds his arm tightly, as though she senses the fragility of what she's marrying into. The paper crackles as I turn the last fold. One more page remains. If you ever doubt me, hold the ribbon. Remember that it once belonged to your christening gown, that it touched both your first breath and my hands when I hid this letter away. Love is not the absence of truce. It is the courage to bear it. And if you find this after I am gone, know that I loved you enough to risk your anger rather than your ignorance. She ends with a postscript. Tell Eleanor she gave me back hope when I thought it was a word for other women. The ink fades completely there, the rest blank except for a smudge near the edge, like a fingerprint caught mid-thought. I fold the letter back along its creases. My reflection glimmers faintly in the glass of the photograph, behind the young couple, behind the mother who hid her truce, now behind me. 3 generations of women bound by the same secret, each believing silence would protect someone they loved. Outside, the light dims. The clock continues its slow rhythm. Somewhere, the faint smell of apple cake, though it must be my imagination, seems to drift through the air, warm and sweet and unbearably sad. The next page begins with a darker stroke of ink, as if she had pressed harder, determined to continue despite her fear. Outside, I imagine the sky that morning, grey, heavy with snow, London already holding its breath as another war began. The letter feels heavier now, as though every word has absorbed the weight of what was still to come. My beloved son, the bells have just stopped ringing. The house smells of wax and rain, the kind that seeps through every crack when the wind changes. I hear the wireless again, the Prime Minister's voice promising strength, and yet my hands tremble. I've tried to pray, but even the prayers sound hollow when the sirens wail in the distance. They say it will be a short war, that the men will be home by Christmas. They said the same in 1914. We both know how that ended. Eleanor has gone to change for the evening meal. Her mother brought me flowers from their garden. What a thing to give roses in the middle of rationing. They fill the room with sweetness, but I can't look at them without thinking of the ones outside, the ones your father planted before his last march. Every petal feels like a promise I can't keep. I don't want this letter to sound like farewell, but every word I write carries the taste of it. You'll go soon. The telegram will come. The orders printed and sealed. When it does, you'll pack quickly, as men do, pretending the weight of the uniform feels natural. I will smile. I'll say I'm proud, and maybe I will be for a moment. But pride is just another name for fear we've learned to polish. The clock on the mantel ticks loud tonight. Each strike feels closer, sharper. There's a small leak near the window, dripping into the basin I placed earlier. It sounds like counting, the seconds, the days, the distance between us already beginning. If you find this letter years from now, please don't think me weak. I only wanted to spare you the burden of knowing how frightened I was. A mother's love is supposed to be a shield, but love can also be a chain, and I didn't want to tie you to the weight of my mistakes. I've hidden the letter behind the photograph from today. You looked so handsome in that uniform, the silver buttons catching the light as if nothing could dim them. Eleanor looked radiant, her eyes following you like she already knew she'd spend the rest of her life waiting for your return. I saw the photographer frame the shot and thought, yes, this is the moment I will choose to remember. That was the moment I slipped the letter beneath the frame. I told myself I would give it to you after the wedding supper, but I couldn't. Not while you held her hand and called me mother with such warmth that it almost made me believe I deserved the name. The handwriting changes again, smaller, trembling. The radio says there was fighting near the Polish border. Some say it will stay there, that it won't reach our shores. But I remember the hunger from the last war, the sound of carriages carrying the wounded through town, the smell of disinfectant that never left the hospital floors. I still wake up at night hearing it. Promise me, Henry, You will write when you can. Even a few words, just so I know the world hasn't taken you yet. The next lines are uneven, as though she had written through tears. I can still feel your small hand clutching my apron the day we buried your father's medal. You were 5. You asked if he'd gone somewhere better. I said yes, though I didn't know where better could be when the world was so cruel. If I could take every hardship meant for you, I would. But life doesn't trade like that. A candle must have burned beside her as she wrote. The edge of the paper bears a faint shadow, a soft brown halo from the heat. She continues. The neighbors say we must stay strong. Mrs. Alden next door sent her boy last week. He waved from the train, laughing, his cap too big for his head. She waved back until her hand trembled. Today she came by for sugar, said she heard from him. 2 sentences only. I'm fine, don't worry. We both pretended those words meant safety. I wonder if one day Eleanor will read the same kind of letter, trying to hear your voice between the lines. There's a small paragraph scratched out so hard the paper nearly tore. I can only make out a few words. If he ever learns the truth, and not her fault. She must have thought better of finishing it. Then another section, neater now, calmer. When you stand on the train platform, look back once. I'll be there, near the end of the crowd. You won't see me cry. I'll keep the blue ribbon in my hand until the smoke hides you from sight. And when the church bells ring that evening, I'll light a candle by your father's photograph and tell him you've joined him in the long road of men who promise to return. Her words tighten, short sentences, clipped breaths. If I am not here when you come back, look behind the frame. You'll find this letter and the truth I couldn't speak. Forgive me for being both your mother and your silence. The ink fades into a trail of dots, then stops. I look down at the letter, its surface trembling under the draft that slips through the window. Outside, the late wind hums against the eaves of the house. Somewhere, a bell tolls. A sound so distant it might be imagination, yet it feels meant for her. I picture that small kitchen in 1939, the kettle hissing softly, the wallpaper peeling in one corner, the clock marking every minute until he left. She must have folded the paper while it was still damp with tears, tucking it quickly behind the photograph before the knock on the door came. The air around me feels the same now, thick with things unsaid. Boleto. This, trapped for 8 decades, carries not just her confession, but her fear, her loneliness, her need to protect through omission. And maybe that's what all mothers did in the war. They lied in the name of love, believing it was the only way to keep their children whole. I place the letter beside the frame, the paper whispering against the table as it settles. The house creaks, a sound that feels like memory moving. In that moment, I realized the war was never just about nations or borders. It was fought in kitchens, in letters, in silences between mothers and sons. The 5th page feels different in my hands, softer, almost translucent. Perhaps she tore it from a different notebook, or maybe it simply aged more gently, spared from the sun by the photograph that sealed it away. The ink here has bled faintly through the fibers, and the handwriting seems slower, as though her hand ached but refused to stop. My darling Henry, they came for you this morning. The knock was polite, but the sound still split the house in two. Eleanor answered before I could reach the door. She smiled when she saw the uniformed man, that brave, practiced smile of women who already know they will be left behind. You kissed my cheek and told me it would be a quick deployment, just a few weeks, a bit of training near the coast. But we both knew better. I could feel the tremor in your voice when you said, "I'll write soon." I stood at the window after you left. The snow had turned to sleet, and the road glistened with it. The tracks from your boots filled with water almost instantly, vanishing into the mud. That's how time works, Henry. It erases the living faster than the dead. Eleanor lingered long after you were gone. She kept touching the sleeve of her coat, as if she could still feel your hand there. I made her tea. She didn't drink it. I told her the story of your father's first departure, how he promised to bring back a piece of the Rhine in a bottle. She laughed softly and said you'd probably do the same, that she'd make you a place for it on the mantel. I didn't have the heart to tell her I'd kept that empty bottle all these years, still waiting. The radio crackles now. They're calling it an expansion of conflict. Men are vanishing from every village. Mrs. Alden's boy hasn't written in weeks. The baker down the street closed his shop. His 2 sons enlisted yesterday. The bells no longer sound like promises. They sound like warnings. I spent the afternoon mending your shirts, though I know you won't wear them. It gives my hands something to do while my mind tries not to imagine the worst. Your scent still lingers on the collar, soap and engine grease. You always smelled of work, even when you were a child. Do you remember the day we built that toy plane from scrap wood? You painted it green, said it would fly over the clouds one day. It hangs above the pantry still, its wings crooked. But it never fell. I like to think that means something. She pauses there, and then the lines grow tighter, shorter, something shifting beneath the surface. I've been thinking about your name again. I thought perhaps I'd made peace with it, with the lie of it, but as the war closes in, I feel its weight more than ever. If something happens to you, if they send back papers, medals, condolences, they'll carry the wrong name, the wrong father's name. You'll be honored as someone who never truly existed. It terrifies me, Henry. Not death, but erasure. That they'll bury you under a name that isn't yours, and that I'll have no right to stand beside your wife at the service. The truth I once thought would protect you might one day deny you entirely. The next sentences are rushed, slanted. I've written to the vicar, asked him to keep a sealed note in the parish records. It holds the truce, your birth name, the date, and my confession. If this letter is never found, perhaps that note will be. One of them must survive. I can feel the urgency in her script, the desperation of a woman trying to fix something already beyond mending. Your stepfather, the mechanic, died 2 winters ago. You never met him, though you saw him once in town, helping at the post office after the raids. He knew of you, Henry. He once asked if you were happy. I said yes. That was the last time we spoke. He died of pneumonia not long after. I did not go to the funeral. Some ghosts must stay unburied. The ink smudges again, but the next paragraph is clearer, slower. If you ever read this, please know I carried no shame in loving you. The shame belonged to the world that forced women to lie for the sake of their children. If God judges me for that, then he has forgotten what it means to be human. There's a faint tear near the bottom of the page, as though the pen pressed too hard. Eleanor will be a good wife. She will love you even in silence, but she will not understand the past. Do not tell her about me until you must. Let her love you without the shadow of my mistakes. Let her think she married a man untouched by secrets. Let her believe in the name on your papers. I can bear that burden longer than she can. The air in the room feels heavy as I read. The candle beside me trembles in the draught. Her words seem to pulse with every flicker, alive and pleading across time. The letter continues. I've kept the house warm tonight by burning old bills, useless documents. I thought of burning this letter too, but the flame frightened me. Once something burns, it can't be forgiven. I'll keep it instead, hidden where love and guilt share the same dust. Perhaps someday, when you are ready, or when your children are old enough to understand that love can be both pure and flawed, they'll find it. Then a line that feels like a wound. If you do not come home, I will not hang your photograph in uniform. I will frame the one from your wedding, the one where you smiled, untouched by war, still my boy. That will be the image I want the world to remember. Not a soldier, my son. The next paragraph trails into reflection. her thoughts drifting between hope and resignation. They say the first snow of winter is the soul of the year leaving quietly. It fell again tonight. I watched it through the window and imagined you somewhere beneath the same sky. If it finds you, let it remind you that home is still here, that someone waits, even if the world insists she shouldn't. Whatever happens, Henry, I am proud of you. For every silence you carried, for every kindness you gave. You have already won the only war that matters, the one between fear and compassion. The final lines are barely visible, written as if by candlelight fading. If you return, I will tell you everything. If not, then let this letter tell it for me. And beneath that, a single word, pressed deep into the page, Mother. I rest the letter on the table, staring at that word. It feels less like a signature and more like an invocation. Outside, a low rumble of thunder rolls over the valley. It's only weather, but it sounds like something larger answering her. I glance again at the photograph. The young man's eyes seem different now, as though the truth beneath the glass had always been waiting for release. The mother's blurred face in the background is no longer peripheral. It's the true center, the silent gravity holding everything together. The granddaughter who found this letter, me, can feel her pulse in every word. Her guilt, her tenderness, her attempt to hold the family together with paper and prayer. And as I sit here, reading by the same kind of flickering light she once wrote by, I realize this isn't just her confession, it's her salvation. The paper of the final page is thinner still, fragile as onion skin. It trembles in my hands when I lift it from the table, a whisper of a life suspended between fear and hope. The ink here is faint, the handwriting smaller, as if she wrote in the quietest hour of night, afraid that even the walls might overhear. My dear Henry, it is past midnight. The snow outside has stopped, leaving the world ghostly white. The fire has burned low. I can hear the church clock strike once, then twice. Each toll sounds softer than the last, as if the world itself were falling asleep. I should sleep too, but my heart will not rest. The house is too silent without your steps, the door too light without your coat hanging behind it. I thought I would stop writing, that I had said all that mattered, but I can't. The words keep finding me, like small birds tapping at the window, demanding to be let in. Your last letter came today, already creased from the journey, the edges damp from the rain. You wrote that you were stationed somewhere near Dover, that you could hear the sea at night. You said the men were restless, that you missed the sound of the church bells from home. I read it aloud 3 times, then folded it beside your father's photograph. I told him, he's safe for now. I wish I could tell you that the world is holding steady, but it isn't. They've begun rationing butter again, and the streets are darker each evening. The baker's wife came by asking if I'd heard from you. She said her youngest is already in France. She tried to smile, but her hands were shaking so much she spilled the tea. Everyone here has the same look now, the eyes of people who listen for every sound, unsure whether it's thunder or guns. Still, I keep baking the apple cake every Sunday, though there's no one left to eat it. The smell fills the house, and for a moment I can almost hear your laughter from the hallway, your boots thudding across the floor. It's a foolish ritual, I know, but it's the only way I remember how to breathe. She must have paused then, for the handwriting deepens slightly, steadier, more deliberate, as if she wanted these next lines to last. Do you remember the blue ribbon I told you about? The one from your christening gown? I've kept it beside your letter. Tonight I tied it around a small parcel, your father's pocket watch, the one that no longer ticks. I'm sending it through a friend who works at the post office. He'll try to get it to your unit. If it reaches you, hold it tight before each march. It once kept time for 2 men who loved you, one by blood, the other by choice. The ink falters, trails off, then begins again. The papers say the Germans have crossed the river line. They say the skies are filled with planes, but I try not to look. I remember too well the sound from the last war, the low hum before the blast, the silence after. Last night, when the sirens began, I went to the cellar and prayed. I whispered your name, every letter of it, as if speaking it aloud could keep you alive. Her next lines are almost illegible, as if written through tears. You once asked me what forgiveness means. I told you I didn't know. But I think I do now. It's the moment you realize that love was never meant to be perfect. It was meant to endure. I hope, wherever you are, you can forgive me for the things I never said, for the truth I hid too long, for the name that was both your shield and your burden. If you do not come home, I want you to know this. You were born out of love, not sin. Every lie I told was an act of mercy. I wanted you to belong somewhere, even if it wasn't fully mine to give. And if heaven allows me one favor, it will be to watch you grow old, to see your hands lined like mine, to know that my silence didn't take your life from you. The paper has small spots where the ink has bloomed round as raindrops. They blur certain words, remember? Home, safe, like the page itself is weeping. Eleanor visited again this afternoon. She brought me a photograph of you in uniform. She said the camera caught you smiling just before the march. I tried to smile back, but I felt my chest tighten. You look so much like your father in that picture. I keep both portraits side by side now, the two of you frozen in your uniforms, both pretending not to be afraid. She pauses again, then writes more softly. When you come home, I'll tell you the truth myself. If I cannot, then this letter will have to speak for me. If you read this, my darling boy, remember, you were my light in every darkness. Even when the world turned to ashes, you were the proof that something beautiful had survived. If I am gone by the time you read this, promise me you will forgive the silence. Promise me you will live without it. The rest of the page grows faint, the ink fading to gray. Only a few words remain legible. The sound of the sea, blue ribbon, apple cake still warm, love, always. And then finally, her name, Margaret, for the first time in the entire letter. Perhaps she believed her confession needed a full name to stand before God. I sit back, my hands trembling, the final words echoing through me. Margaret, my great-grandmother. A woman I'd only known through half-spoken stories. Stern, quiet, the kind of woman who kept her curtains drawn even in summer. No one ever mentioned her secret, her silence, her lie that rewrote the family's history. Outside, the first drops of rain begin to fall, tapping softly against the window. It sounds like her voice, decades later, still trying to be heard. I reach for the photograph again. The mother's eyes are there, unfocused but full of something that now feels alive. Fear, yes, but also an impossible tenderness. I trace the line of the frame where the letter once lay hidden, imagining her fingers pressing it into place, whispering a prayer that time would keep it safe. The candle is burning low, wax spilling like tears down its side. I whisper her name once, Margaret, and it feels strange, like summoning a ghost into the room. But the air doesn't feel heavy. It feels released. I think of Henry somewhere in the chaos of 1940, clutching that blue ribbon, maybe reading her last words in a trench or by lamplight, unaware that the truth of his life rested in a photograph back home. Or maybe he never received the parcel at all. Maybe it was lost, like her confession, like so many other words the war swallowed whole. The letter ends, but her voice lingers. Voice woven through every sound in the house, the clock ticking, the rain, the faint hum of electricity. I realized she didn't just write this for him. She wrote it for whoever would come after, for whoever would need to understand why love sometimes hides itself inside silence. I fold the letter carefully, returning it to its place beside the photograph. The paper sighs softly, as though relieved to rest. For the first time since I found it, the house feels warm. Tonight before I sleep, I will bake an apple cake. I will tie the blue ribbon around the pan. I will light a candle and let it burn until dawn. And I will whisper her words into the quiet. You were born out of love, not sin. Because sometimes the only way to answer the past is to keep it alive with gentleness. The house is quiet again. Only the steady hum of the radiator and the rhythmic tick of the wall clock fill the air. The candle that once flickered beside the letter has melted to its base, leaving a pool of wax like frozen time. I sit at the same wooden table where I first placed the photograph, the letter unfolded beside it, both touched by the gray light of morning. It's been several weeks since I found it, since Margaret's words surfaced from behind the frame that hid them for nearly 80 years. The paper is sealed now inside a clear archival sleeve, safe from air and touch, but I still keep it near me. I read it every night, tracing her voice across the lines until I can almost hear her breath between the sentences. I began searching for answers, driven by the quiet ache her confession left behind. In the county archives, I found the parish record she mentioned, a sealed note dated January of 1940. The ink was the same deep brown, the hand unmistakable. Inside was the truth she feared would die with her. Henry was born in 1919 under the surname Fletcher, not Oldham. The father listed was unknown. That small entry changed the entire shape of our family's story. Henry, my grandfather, had lived his whole life believing he was the son of a fallen soldier, a hero of the Great War. But he wasn't. He was the child of a secret love, a love too dangerous to speak aloud in a world that punished women for surviving it. When I showed the letter to my mother, she sat in silence for a long time. Her hands shook as she read, tears slipping quietly down her cheeks. So that's why she was so distant, she whispered. She carried all that alone. We talked until dawn, 2 generations trying to understand a woman we had both misjudged. We had always called her severe, unfeeling, but her silence wasn't cruelty, it was armor. She had hidden her tenderness inside lies because the truth, in her time, would have destroyed them. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how carefully she had built her fortress of secrecy. The name change after Henry's birth was real, recorded in the town registry. The timing aligned with her husband's death. There were gaps in the census. Years she had vanished from records entirely, living perhaps under another address before returning to her maiden name. The house she wrote from still stands, its windows boarded, its chimney leaning, the roses long gone. I visited it last week. The air smelled of rain and rust. I found the garden overgrown, wild ivy curling up the brick walls. Through the cracked window, I could see the faint outline of a table beneath a sheet of dust. For a moment I imagined her there again, Margaret, writing by candlelight, her hand trembling, the clock ticking behind her. Inside the ruins, the wallpaper still bore the faint pattern of roses. The same roses she wrote about. I touched the wall and felt the chill of the past slip into my bones. The silence there was immense, but not empty. It was full of waiting. I brought the letter with me, and for a moment I thought of placing it back behind the photograph, returning it to the darkness where it had survived so long. But I couldn't. She wanted it to be found. Her entire letter was an act of faith that someday someone in her family would be ready to listen without judgment. I am that someone. Henry never knew the truth. He returned from the war in 1945, wounded but alive. The parcel she sent, the pocket watch tied with the blue ribbon, was lost when his unit's mail ship was sunk by a German U-boat off the coast of France. He came home to find the house empty. Margaret had died the winter before. Pneumonia, they said, though I suspect it was something quieter. Exhaustion of the soul. The letter remained sealed behind the photograph from his wedding, hanging for decades in the hallway of the home he built with Eleanor. My mother remembers dusting that frame every Sunday, never knowing what it concealed. She said her father rarely spoke of his mother, only that she did what she had to. Now I understand how much weight those words carried. When I finished reading the last page for the first time, I took the photograph to the window. The light caught the glass just right, illuminating the faint shape of her behind them, the ghostly silhouette of a woman watching her son begin a life she wasn't sure she belonged in. For the first time, I saw not distance in her eyes, but mercy. The truth she left behind has changed us all. My mother has begun using her real maiden name again, Fletcher. She says it feels like reclaiming a kindness that history stole. We've decided to place both names on the family memorial, Alden and Fletcher, joined by a dash instead of divided by a lie. I keep Margaret's blue ribbon framed above my desk now, stretched across the photograph she once hid behind. It's faded and frayed, but its color still catches the light like a promise. Sometimes when the house is still, I imagine her watching, perhaps proud, perhaps finally at peace, seeing her story spoken aloud at last. I've learned something from her letter that no archive or document could teach. The real inheritance we carry isn't blood or name. It's the courage to tell the truth when silence has grown too heavy. The letter survived war, fire, time, and shame. It outlasted every attempt to erase it. It waited for the moment when its words would finally meet ears that could understand them. Not as accusation, but as confession, as love made visible. And as I fold it one last time, sealing it gently in its case, I whisper what she wanted most to hear. You are forgiven. Tonight I'll light a single candle and set it by the window, just as she did for Henry. The flame will flicker against the glass, small but steady, seen only by those who look closely. It's not for mourning, it's for memory, for the quiet hope that words, even when delayed by decades, can still reach the hearts they were meant for. Mothers lost war. Letters exists for that reason, to give voice to those who wrote in darkness and waited for the light. If this story has found a place in you, please like this video and subscribe to Mothers Lost War Letters, so these voices of mothers and sons, of silence and love, are never forgotten again. Because somewhere, even now, another letter waits in the dark, still holding the words they never got to hear in time.